I just want you to hear this. This is a good sound. So it's lovely and crisp. Hi foodies, and welcome back to Matthew's Culinary Corner. Now today we're going to make sourdough bread. Now it's not as tricky as it sounds, and the main ingredient is obviously the sourdough, and I can take you through that in another recipe, how to actually create the sourdough starter. It's very simple. Remember, bread is just flour and water mixed together, salt for flavor, and of course sourdough has the yeast, which is fermented and it smells great. It's a sour, lovely sour smell. I love it. So today let's just head right in and create some sourdough. It's going to take a time, it's going to take a while, so don't worry too much. Okay, 400 grams of flour, strong bread flour. I've also got 50 grams of wheat flour, just to give it a bit more of a different flavor. You don't need that, you can make it 450 grams of normal flour. 8 grams of salt and 310 grams of water. Now the thing about the water is, it depends where you are, how hot and how humid it is. Sourdough is one of those things, if you start making it, you'll start adjusting your water content or hydration, and it all depends on, you know, the atmosphere and so forth. So what I like to do is actually, I start off with my starter with my flours and my salt, and then I pour in the water, but I don't pour it all in. I see how the consistency is, and then I determine if I need to use it all. But that's your basic ingredients, and after that we're going to have beautiful sourdough bread. Okay, right, so I'm going to take my sourdough starter, and you can see it's all bubbly. That means it's active. You can't do it unless it's active, okay? So I'm going to put 100 grams of starter in here, which is not a lot. That's probably way too much. Well, yeah, but it looks good. Now we'll never waste the sourdough starter. We can make bagels. In fact, we'll make bagels and other things. Now we've got our starter. I'm going to mix it the dough straight in. The flours and the salt and the water. As I say, I'm not going to use all the water. I'm going to just start off with using the back of my spoon. And all we're trying to do here, initially, is just to make a shaggy mix, okay? And as long as there's no dry flour left, we'll be right. We're not trying to bring it together. We're just trying to make what we call a shaggy mix. Now, I was making this a lot in Hong Kong during COVID, and I remember I brought some starter over to New Zealand for my sister. I think she makes it at least 2 or 3 times a week. So the starter is quite old. Of course, it is refreshed often. So out of that 310 grams, we've used approximately 300, and I think that's great. And that's just the right amount, as far as I can see. It's all brought together, and it's kind of like shaggy. Okay. Now you can use your hands as well, which I usually do, but I just want to show you another technique, so you're not so messy to start with. Okay, so here's our shaggy bread dough. We're going to leave that on the counter. I'm going to cover it, and we'll leave it there for 30 minutes. I just get a nice clean tea towel, and there we go. 30 minutes covered, and then we'll be back. Great, so it's been 30 minutes and our dough is nice and shaggy. What we've done is, it's called auto-lees, and basically it's just allowed the dough, the water, the yeast, the flour, the water, the yeast, the salt, just to combine. And now this is where it gets real. What we're going to do now is we're going to do stretch and fold. So I've got a nice little spray, and I spray my bench with water. We're going to do this method a few times, and that is basically just stretching and folding the dough. So, nice wet surface, and all we're doing is stretching and folding. Right? Stretch it, turn it 90 degrees, and what we're trying to do here is create the buildup of gluten. So you can only do this a certain number of times. It's usually about four or five, and then it gets nice, it gets tight. Then what I do is I just bring the dough and use the bench to make the resistance of the dough and bring it forward towards you. Then I also do this, and it makes it nice and round. So look, we went from a shaggy dough to quite a nice round dough just by stretching and folding, turning, stretching and folding, turning about 4 to 6 times, and then roll it, bring it towards you and use the friction, and now we're done. So pretty simple. Put it back in the bowl and we cover it for 2 hours. All right, so it's 2 hours have gone, and yeah, it looks okay. It's grown a little. What we're going to do now is the same thing. We're just going to put some water in our bench. Scrape out the dough. And now we're just going to do the same thing. Stretch and fold. So I sort of bang it down a bit, then I pull it. Ooh, see? That's quite good. Okay, now, that's that. Now, if you recall, I took out 100 grams of our sourdough starter. So you always want to keep your starter alive and keep feeding it. So what you do is you actually take, I always use 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water to mix it for another day. So I'm just going to show you what we're doing. This is feeding it. Perfect. 50 flour. Oh, just right. And 50 water. So that's 100. We took out 100, if you recall, for the recipe. And we just mix it up. Make sure it's not overly wet, but if you've been doing this for a while, it should be the right consistency. I actually, when I don't want to make sourdough, people say, oh, what do you do with the starter? Well, I actually feed it, and then I put it into the fridge for a week, and then I take it out and do another one. But if I'm not making bread, what I do is I still feed it. I take out 100 grams and I do the same process again. Wonderful. And I'll be showing you in another video just how to create a starter. Very simple, because we're using the yeast from the air and just flour and water, and we're letting it, the bacteria work its magic, as we say. Okay, let's come back in an hour and do some shaping of our bread. Okay, so it's been an hour and I'm just flouring a board. The board is more about the heat. If you have a hard surface like a metal one, you might lose some of the heat. So I like to use my board. Just going to bring the dough out. And now we're going to do a very simple pre-shape. I'm hardly going to touch it. I'm just going to basically put it into a circle, just using my dough scraper. And because of the shape of the bowl, it's pretty much in the right shape. You can see we've got some gas bubbles, which is good. And we're going to leave it there for an hour. I'm just going to cover it, leave it on the bench for an hour before we actually do the shaping. Now the other thing is, often we use a banneton to shape. Although I've got some bannetons, I just wanted to show you a very simple way. So we'll get to that when we do the shaping. Okay, so it's been another hour, and you can see that our dough is spread out a bit, which is great. Now what we're going to do is actually going to do some shaping. So what we do is I turn it over, I sort of spread it out, I bring one side over to the other. Well, actually, one side over to the middle, turn it over and pull the other side over the full amount, the full dough. And then I stretch it, and then I simply just roll it up. Pull and roll it, pull and roll it, just like that. Gorgeous. Then I'm just going to use my fingers. Oh, I heard some of the air pockets there. Great. Just use my hands, rotate until we get a nice round shape. So that's perfect. Now, I said before we often use a banneton, and I'm not going to use one. I'm just going to take a tea towel, pop it in, put some flour, ideally rice flour because it will never stick. Take my dough and then just pop it in. And then I'm going to do just a little stitching, we call it. And all I'm going to do is just going to take one side and put it over the other, and put one side over the other. Do the same with the other one. One side over the other. One side over the other. It's not a requirement. But you know, sometimes these things are habits. But it does keep the dough all together if you have any massive gaps in the bottom. Now what we're going to do, I'm just going to put a little flour on the bottom, tiny little bit, keep it from sticking, and put the tea towel over it. Leave it here for 1 more hour, and then we'll put it in the fridge. Okay? And then tomorrow, we're going to bring it out. It's going to be quite cold. We're going to score it, and then we're going to put it in our Dutch oven, and I'll explain all that tomorrow. Okay, so it's been another hour. This is the last hour, and not much change, but the dough is all ready. And now what we're going to do is just gently fold it, keep it in the bowl, and now we're going to let it bulk ferment in the fridge overnight. So that's about 12 hours, approximately, 13, depends on what time I get up. All right, so into the fridge. Great, okay, it's the next day. Let's get the sourdough dough out of the fridge and take a look. I've got some baking paper here, and I've got my cast iron pot, which the bread's going to go in. So this will just go in there, and that'll go into the oven. So I'm going to put this down here. I'm going to unwrap the dough, and I'm actually going to put it onto the paper. Looks good. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to score it. So I've got a razor blade here, but you can use a sharp knife or a razor blade, whatever you have, and just try to do it in one go. I put it quite deep. Yep, that's good. And that enables the bread, when it rises, to actually build up and not crack on its own. So there it is. We put that into our pot, we put the lid on, and we put it into a cold oven, and we set the oven to 230 degrees Celsius, and we bake it for 1 hour with the lid on. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the lid off for 10 minutes, and we're going to let it brown. Fingers crossed it all works. Great, so I've just taken the lid off, and the bread's looking great. Based on what I can see, I'm thinking on average I usually leave it about 10 minutes, but by looking at this one, I'm thinking 5 minutes. Great, so 5 minutes is up. I'm going to take the bread out of the oven. Now that's looking pretty good, I have to say. It's actually split a bit more than anticipated. But here we go. There's our loaf. So the pot's really hot. So all I suggest is always cover it with the hand mitts. Put it on top so that no one touches it directly. Okay, let's look at our bread. Wow, it's looking great. Okay, so that line we cut across here, it is actually, this is what they call the ear, like an ear, and it's come across quite nicely. In fact, it's actually come out a bit more than I anticipated. So that's good. I mean, it's a good rise, nice and hollow on the bottom. So we're going to leave that to cool down. Never cut the fresh bread straight away, even though you want to. It's still cooking, inside it'll be steaming and so forth. So, you know, leave it for about 45 minutes to an hour if you can, and we'll open it up and see what it looks like inside. And while we're here, remember yesterday I took out 100 grams of the yeast, and then I fed it with 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, and this is what it looks like this morning. So it's bubbling again, and it's all ready to go. So this is how you can keep it going. You can just make bread every day. But as I said, if you don't want to, just feed it and then put it into the fridge, and it will last about a week before you have to feed it again. All right? I just want you to hear this. This is a good sound. So it's lovely and crisp. Now what we're going to do, we're going to get our knife, and I'm actually going to cut it in two crosswise, and we'll see how it looks on the inside. Such a good sound. Oh my gosh. It tells us it's suitably cooked. Okay, let's have a look inside. Oh yes, very nice. So it's got a good crumb, nice air pockets. As you can see, brings back. There's no dough on the lower level, which means it's fully cooked. And yeah, lovely air pockets. But not too many. You don't want heaps, and you want them evenly distributed. That's not bad. It's not bad. I think that's great, and I hope that you try this yourself. And if you don't have a starter, or you can borrow one from a friend, or go to a bakery actually, and try this out. I will be creating a video about how to do a starter. It's pretty simple. It just takes about 6 to 7 days to get it really active, which is what this one's doing now. As you can see, ooh, very good, ready for the next loaf. I'm going to make a sandwich out of this for lunch. Now, as I said, you can add seeds, about 80 grams additional, like for seeds, raisins. I like to use rosemary and cheese, sun-dried tomatoes, all those good things. And you can do it yourself. And I have to say, it's a lot cheaper than buying it. The whole thing about baking is, it's time consuming, but if you have other things to do at the same time, then it's excellent, because you get to do what you love, and you get to have some lovely fresh, made from scratch bread. All right, now don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, and I look forward to talking to you in the next video. Cheers.